Hi there, my name is Andrew Brown, and welcome to Reactions of Carboxylic Acids. We'll touch only briefly on the reactions that actually yield carboxylic acids, because the majority of this video will focus on the substitution reactions associated with them. After we've covered the three main types of nucleophilic acyl substitution reactions, we'll turn to reductive processes, removal of the carboxylic acid group altogether, and the role of carboxylic acid salts in biology. After watching this video, you should be able to answer questions like this one, which asks you to identify the carboxylic acid that is most susceptible to decarboxylation after heating. We will begin our review with a quick look at the ways in which carboxylic acids are synthesized. Indeed, if you understand how these acids are formed, you should have an easier time predicting the reaction mechanisms by which they react. The first process we will explore is oxidation. When a primary alcohol like ethanol is treated with hot potassium permanganate, the hydroxyl functional group is oxidized to the carboxylic acid functional group and ethanoic acid is produced. You can imagine that if we had instead started with an aldehyde, the reaction mechanism would be essentially the same, except that such a strong oxidizing agent would not be needed. When you're given an alkene, such as E-but2-ene here, the presence of an oxidizing agent should get you thinking oxidative cleavage. Ozone in hydrogen peroxide is, in fact, a strong oxidizing agent, and so we observe two molecules of ethanoic acid being formed as the products. Now that we've seen how carboxylic acids are made, let's take a look at some of the reaction pathways they can enter. The first we'll examine is nucleophilic acyl substitution. The term acyl refers to the carbonyl group and its associated alkyl chain, denoted by R sub 1 in this example. As the name suggests, we will be substituting the functional group bound to the acyl structure, a hydroxyl here, for a nucleophile. Pay attention to the reaction mechanism here, because it is actually quite representative of several of the other reactions we'll see later in this video. Let's begin by acknowledging the fate of the leaving group. It appears from the products that the hydroxyl will be protonated as it dissociates from the carboxylic acid. That is very fortunate, because from what we know about good and poor leaving groups, the hydroxyl is not a particularly good one. In the first step of the reaction, the nucleophile attacks the carbonyl, leading to an sp3 hybridized intermediate. Oftentimes in nucleophilic acyl substitution reactions, the nucleophile will be generated by the dissociation of a halo acid. Therefore, when oxygen unloads the excess negative charge placed on it, there will be a free proton to facilitate the hydroxyl group leaving and water being formed. It is worth pointing out that reactions like this, where two compounds' union accompanies the formation of water, are also known as condensation reactions. Now that you've seen the general reaction mechanism for nucleophilic acyl substitution, let's review some of these special products. An amide is formed when the nucleophile is an amine. Water is still lost as a byproduct though, and so this also qualifies as a condensation reaction. The mechanism is essentially the same as that which we saw previously, with the amines lone pair facilitating nucleophilic attack of the carbonyl carbon and charge restabilization kicking off a molecule of water. In the end, the product is named by substituting the oic acid suffix for amide and adding a capital N to denote everything to the right of the nitrogen atom. Thus, for the 4-carbon amide shown here, the parent chain is dubbed propanamide with an N-methyl prefix. As far as acyl compounds go, in fact, amides are actually quite stable. That is due to conjugation between the carbonyl double bond and nitrogen's lone pair, which allows for resonance when electrons are pushed around. Now for the brand of nucleophilic acyl substitution reactions that result in esters. Esters are formed when the attacking species is an alcohol and are often catalyzed by acids. If you take a look at the mechanism here, notice how the carbonyl oxygen is protonated. That is a hallmark of acid-catalyzed reactions. As you have seen several times by now, the first step involves nucleophilic attack of the carbonyl carbon. Even though an oxyanion is not generated in this case, the molecule will restabilize by pushing electrons in the familiar way, leading to the substituted product. As far as nomenclature goes, esters are named as if they were the salts of their carboxylic acid precursors. This just means you drop the IC ending and replace it with ATE. For the example molecule on the right at the bottom of the screen, the parent chain is named propanoate, and the lower priority methyl substituent is added to the front. Okay, let's now explore anhydride formation to round out our review of nucleophilic acyl substitution reactions. These are the ones we more typically think of when we picture a condensation reaction. Two compounds on the larger side combine to form one long chain and release water in the process. In our example reaction here, it is particularly clear to see where the H2O will come from. The major product, which sort of looks like a double-sided ester, is formed by the same old nucleophilic acyl substitution mechanism, and so we'll forego showing it to you for a fourth time. What is more, anhydrides are also incredibly simple to name. You just leave the carboxylic acid's name largely intact, replacing the word acid with anhydride. For the example molecule at the bottom of the screen here, the original carboxylic acid was propanoic acid. Therefore, we preserve the term propanoic and just slap on anhydride at the end. Whew! That was a lot on the nucleophilic acyl substitution reactions. We still have 3 more reaction pathways to consider though, so now might be a good time to stand up and take a few deep breaths if you're starting to feel a little burnt out. When we talk about reductive processes, most of you are probably familiar with reagents with lots of H's, like lithium aluminum hydride and sodium borohydride. Indeed, for reactions like the one you see here, those reagents facilitate another condensation reaction in which the carboxylic acid will reduce all the way to a primary alcohol via successive bombardments of hydride anions. This is a little different from how we normally see hydrogen represented in chemistry, in its cationic form, and the negative charge actually facilitates a reaction mechanism very similar to what we just saw for the nucleophilic acyl substitution reactions. See for yourself. The hydride anion attacks the carbonyl carbon, concentrating electron density on the oxygen atom. Then, especially if free protons are nearby, charge restabilization results in the ejection of a molecule of water and the formation of an aldehyde. For a strong reducing agent like lithium aluminum hydride, however, the reaction is not done there. Additional hydride anions can continue to react with the aldehyde intermediate and, via the same mechanism, generate a primary alcohol. Let's now review the process of decarboxylation. What's going on here is the loss of the whole carboxylic acid functional group as carbon dioxide. The best candidates for decarboxylation are the beta-keto acids. Although it might not look like it, decarboxylation is actually a form of oxidation. Notice that in the transformation of the carboxylic acid to carbon dioxide here, carbon has actually gained another bond to oxygen, increasing its oxidation state. Also keep in mind that carbon dioxide is gaseous, and so it bubbles out of the reaction, thereby driving the forward process via Le Chatelier's principle. When decarboxylation occurs in the presence of acid, the hydrogen from the hydroxyl group within the carboxylic acid is abstracted by the other carbonyl oxygen, thus pushing several electrons and freeing carbon dioxide. As we said, it bubbles out of the reaction, and the other product undergoes tautomerization to reform the carbonyl. Okay, so now it's time for our final process, saponification. Presented for you here is a salt of a carboxylic acid with a long alkyl chain. The hydrophobic tail and hydrophilic head should sound familiar, because they comprise the functional components of fats. Indeed, saponification refers to the accumulation of many long-chain carboxylic acid salts with their hydrophilic and hydrophobic regions oriented similarly. One outcome of saponification is the formation of micelles, as seen here. Keep in mind additionally that micelles are essentially mini plasma membranes, so if you extrapolate, you should be able to imagine how carboxylic acid saponification is involved in cell genesis. Alright, that does it for the material this video is going to cover. Let's apply what you've learned now on some practice questions. This first one is asking you to pick out the molecule that will likely undergo decarboxylation after heating. The answer should be C. Now, we hadn't mentioned heating as a reaction condition until now, but you should still have enough information to figure this question out. The key is in the arrangement of the carbonyls in each answer choice. Only choice C is a beta-keto acid, and so that's our answer. Okay, how about another one? This question is asking for the product from lithium aluminum hydroxide treatment of benzoic acid. The answer here is also C. Now, you should be familiar with lithium aluminum hydride as a reducing agent. However, we've thrown a slight curveball at you, because you only get 1/4 equivalent of it. That means that you essentially have only one hydride to work with, and so only one reductive process is allowed. Therefore, reduction stops at the point of aldehyde, and our answer is C. Alright, if you got both of those correct, congratulations. If not, please feel free to watch this video again as many times as you need. Before we finish completely, let's review what was covered in this video. We began with an overview of carboxylic acid synthesis. In the example you saw, a primary alcohol like ethanol could be converted directly into its corresponding carboxylic acid by treating with hot potassium permanganate. For the nucleophilic acyl substitution reactions, we first looked at the general mechanism and then went into a bit greater detail for several different species of nucleophiles. The amide pathway relied on a nucleophilic amine, the ester pathway used a primary alcohol as its nucleophile, and the anhydride pathway involved a second carboxylic acid. For the reduction reactions of carboxylic acids, we saw how hydride anions from a reducing agent such as lithium aluminum hydroxide interacted with carboxylic acids in a similar fashion to that of nucleophilic acyl substitution. Decarboxylation was depicted from the acid-catalyzed viewpoint, whereby the entire carboxylic acid functional group is released as carbon dioxide, and the other product tautomerizes to reform the carbonyl. And we finished up with saponification, which is the process where carboxylic acid salts come to form micelles and plasma membranes. Thanks very much for watching, and good luck in your continued MCAT study.